Okay. Hey everyone, this is Faisal. I'm a certified high performance coach and I help entrepreneurs and professionals live happy, fulfilled, and successful lives by raising their performance and potential in everything that they do. Today we have a special guest. We have Dean Jacobs here. Say hi, Dean.
Hey, good morning. Or afternoon or whatever it is that you
well, here it's kind of afternoon, but good morning for you. So I really love what Dean does. Dean is a speaker, a photojournalist, world traveler, and an author. And he's going to inspire us today with his story and what he has learned traveling over 58 different countries. And I'm really excited about this interview because one of the big reasons why I do what I do is to help inspire people and get them to see the possibilities in their life rather than the limitations that are given to us by our societies. Most societies that we are in were taught to live within boxes, but we don't necessarily have to do that. If you choose, you can do whatever you want to do, and we're gonna go into that with Dean. And so I'm gonna take this right to Dean. He's going to talk about his story a little bit, and then we're going to jump into the conversation. Go ahead, Dean.
Awesome. Well, hey, man, Faisal, thanks for inviting me to be a part of your mission to inspire people. And I just think that and believe that it's awesome. So, my story, where do I want to begin? Because, well, first of all, people think I'm super wealthy, and I don't have a lot of money because I have traveled through 50 countries, but I have a treasure chest that lives in my heart. And I'm going to backpedal. I'm going to give you my background so you give some context about who I am and how I got to where I'm at. And I live in Nebraska, which is in the center of the United States. It's a state that actually has more cows than people. It means it's pretty rural here, right? And when I was growing up, my dad was a trucker, and my mom was a housewife who never learned how to drive a car. I remember the first time I went exploring, I was 9. I actually rode my bicycle 10 miles all by myself down the gravel roads to the neighboring town. Because my dad was actually supposed to be loading his truck across the river. And I thought, well, maybe I could see my dad and I don't get to see him that much. And I'd ride my bike down. And back then, we didn't have cell phones. And as long as I was home by supper time, everything was cool, right? There wasn't a lot of questions asked in that regard. And so I rode my bike all the way down there and looked across the river, and he wasn't there. And I rode my bike all the way back. Now, I rode past many farms. And then in rural Nebraska, it's not uncommon for farms to have guard dogs on the farm. And they're not little dogs. They are big dogs, right? And they're not, they don't put them on a chain. So I would ride my bike as quietly as I could. I get really close to the farm. I pedal as fast as I could, and those big old dogs come barking after me. And did they ever get me? No. And that's when I learned when I was 9 years old, one of the most important lessons of my whole life. And that was this, that on the other side of that wall of fear, there was a whole world waiting to be explored. We let that wall of fear stop us, traps us into a small box. Now, I just don't believe we're here to live in little boxes, kind of as what you were saying earlier. I think we're here to do something special. And that is to stretch and blow those boxes up by dreaming big, by living tall, so we can get on with making the world what? Better. Dreaming big, having a picture you want to see, experience, do, and try and become. Living tall, honesty, dignity, and respect, kindness, caring, all those words that really have heart and meaning. And what's the purpose of all this? It's not just to walk through life, pay bills, and die, but to make the world what? Better. So those who come after us have something to step into, right? So eventually, I after a lot of soul searching, and I was in an auto accident that I didn't get a scratch on, but like had me pause and reflect on, how much stuff do you really need in order to be happy? And and then I started asking myself, well, because that's what I was working for. I was working really hard to have lots of what? Stuff, right? Yeah. And then I started asking myself again, well, what do you dream about? And what I dreamed about as a little boy in Nebraska was to go explore the world, not to help increase Pfizer profits, because I work for Pfizer, and I have nothing against Pfizer. 10 years I was in the corporate world working for them. But that wasn't my dream. And my dream was to go explore. So eventually what that led me to was I quit my job and I sold my house. to follow to follow my dream. Now I can take you to the spot where I was in Idaho when I called up Pfizer, said I was leaving because everything I knew my life to be just went spinning off without me. And then I was left with a blank canvas for me to become the artist of my life instead of the projected expectations that I had taken on from the world and from people who, were trying to express their care for me. But it kept boxing me in, and I kept feeling confined or restricted and not being able to live into the vision, the potential, or the desire where life wanted to take me. So I quit my job and I sold my house. People thought I was what? Crazy. That's okay. I'm not following their
That's
dreams.
one of the best signs when people think you're crazy.
Yeah, exactly. People thought I was crazy, but that's okay because I'm not following their dreams. I'm following mine. And this whole canvas, I want to be the artist of my life, not other people's expectation or that I put on there. The other thing that I had a great insight just yesterday, that every time we stretch that box that we confine, that gives us a little more canvas to paint, right? It gives us, every time we stretch the box, we have a little more opportunity to create who we want to be and what we want to become. That's how we expand that canvas. If you're trying to paint on a little canvas like that, it's not very fun, right? So this is about expanding your perspective. This is about expanding our canvas. So by the time we are done, we have this incredible masterpiece of who we are and the beauty and the contribution we want to make. And I especially mean beauty. I have a little bit artistic. I have an art minor from college, so I want to create something beautiful. So that way, when I'm done, the world's a little bit better off because I took some steps along the way. It's my contribution to make the world what? Better. So I quit my job and sold my house. The first trip I took around the world lasted for 2 years. I didn't come home for 2 years. My daily budget was $10 to $15 a day because I'm not a trust fund baby. And now I had 2 reasons for that. I had a little pile of money from the sale of my house. The longer I make the money last, the longer I could travel. The other thing I instinctively knew was this, that a tiny budget would put me in contact with the ordinary, everyday people. And I could have stayed in North America and never ran out of beautiful things to see. But it's a chance to sit down, break bread, have a cup of tea with someone who has different color skin, speaks a different language, maybe even worships a different God than what you do. It gives you one of the greatest chances to learn about the world and at the same time to learn about yourself. It's the magical dance that happens when we put ourselves in new and different situations. You can see all this traveling has given me a special perspective. And that's why I'm so passionate about going into schools to inspire our kids to have hopes and dreams, because mostly what we know about the world, it comes from the news, and mostly what makes the news is what? Bad stuff. And then we start building
fear, craziness.
Yeah, exactly. And we start building barriers and walls to keep all the bad things out. But when you build walls and barriers to keep all the bad things out, you also keep out all the what?
Good
all
things.
The beautiful too. And then we are just trapped ourselves back again here. And the human spirit was not meant to live this way. We were meant to live as vibrant and full and alive as possible. But we trap ourselves in our own mind by limiting what we think is possible, by not engaging in the world, and then we're just left. What did I say? Well, I always ask the kids, "How do you know anyone? Do you know anyone who's grumpy?" And they go, "Yeah, that's because they're trapped in their what? Box, exactly." They allow themselves. So one of the greatest stories I got, or I shouldn't say, well, I get a lot of emails from kids and from parents too. I got an email from a parent, Faisal. I just got out of the Amazon rainforest. At this time, I was taking students in the Amazon rainforest down in South America. This parent writes to me, she goes, "Dean Jacobs, dear Dean, I'm in the emergency room with my 7-year-old son, Ben." And I'm thinking, where's this going to go, right? And he cut his head open on the kitchen counter when he was playing, so we had to bring him in to the emergency room to get him fixed up. And he was starting to get afraid. But then he reeled himself back in by quoting what he learned in your school program, "I can't let fear trap me in the box," like Dean Jacobs says.
Wow.
And so if we can help a kid get his arms and his mind and his heart around a framework or a map that will help them, what I call living a life of wonder, then we serve them. Then we just give them a little more oxygen and love, and then see what contribution that they can make. And this is the same thing for adults too. But I dial it in for kids because that's where a lot of my passion is. But the same concept applies for adults. How's that?
That's really awesome. So then when you went the first time for the 2 years, like were there any thoughts, any feelings, any fears that were preventing you from going into this journey, and how did you get over that?
Oh, all right. Were there any fears? Of course there were fears. I mean, I knew there would be a point because I was making good money back in 2000. I was making over $100,000 a year. I don't know about you, but in my world, that's a lot of money, right? And I knew there'd come a point that I would question myself. And it came on when I was on the plane as I left from California, because the first trip, I went from California to the Cook Islands in Fiji, New Zealand, Australia, Indonesia, and then Southeast Asia, and then the Middle East, and then across Africa. And as I sat on that plane, as it left LA, I remember distinctly, oh my gosh, what did I just do? Right? Like, but I was committed, and I had my walking stick, but I was committed to go. But I'm like, and for 2 months, like 3 months, my mind, it felt like it was still on vacation. You ever been on vacation and you're trying to get everything done in your vacation? So you come home, you're like exhausted kind of thing. And my mind was kind of racing that way because I was pretty driven. I was very successful working for Pfizer. I was successful enough that when I finished that first trip around the world after 2 years, they asked me to come back. Or they called me up and asked me to come back. And I said, well, not quite yet. And they stopped calling. But, of course, my mind, I knew I had enough awareness to know that there was going to be some questions and doubts. And then I just found this internal belief and some concepts and frameworks that I would tell myself to help me continue down the journey. One of them was like, I believe this journey was designed for me, but the bigger than me is a chance to learn and grow. So that way, that would allow me to take certain choices without judging those choices, but like asking myself, how can I learn and grow in that as I go down that pathway? Another one was to believe in my ability to figure things out. I'd land in a country, I didn't speak their language. I'd try. I mean, to be respectful, I would try to learn how to speak their language, but I'd have to learn how to communicate and how to navigate, how to get from the airport to the hostel. Where am I going to go eat? Things like that. Now I have travel guides called Lonely Planet, things like that, but still I had to figure out how to get from point A to point B. So that means I had to believe in my ability to figure things out. Another thing that I always reminded myself is we never let fear stop us, right? Because on the other side of that wall of fear is this whole world waiting to be explored. If I let fear stop me, that's going to trap me back in the box. That doesn't mean make stupid choices, right? Don't jump out of airplanes without parachutes. I mean that kind of stuff. Now, I don't know how to swim, and I've whitewater rafted the Nile and floated 3,000 miles down the Amazon and things like that. And if I didn't, and I have a little fear around that, of course, right? But I don't let that stop me from following my dreams, because I know that, that once again will trap me. And do I need to learn how to swim? Yes, I know that. Kids tell me that all the time. And one of these days I will get that down. But in the meantime, I don't wait for that to change. I still charge ahead and go. Oh, what else did I? Oh, then, practice the things like kindness, dignity, respect, curiosity, generosity. Those are beautiful qualities that I got to experience in receiving and also to give along the way. And those things give me a lot of faith and trust in humanity, because the truth is there's way more good than there's bad. It's just that stuff never makes the news, right? That stuff never makes the news. And all we all are is spoon-fed the negative narrative that takes away our curiosity and of being engaged with the world and leads us here. So, doubts. How did I do them? I journaled. I would go on long walks. It was a spiritual journey for me too. I went to the birthplace of Buddha, the birthplace of Krishna. I went to the birthplace of Christ. I prayed with Muslims in Syria, and was invited into all these worlds to expand my box, to expand my canvas. And when someone graciously invites me in, of course, I'm going to say yes, because I'm committed to learning and to growing to understand the world. Another important lesson I got as I traveled was People who have nothing are always trying to give me everything.
Hmm.
In the way of kindness and dignity and respect. And what did that teach me? That taught me the really fundamental, life-changing lesson that happiness doesn't come from stuff, but it comes how we treat each other with kindness and dignity and respect. That's such an important lesson, because in our culture here, as you are really unaware of, we're constantly told if you have this and this and this, that you'll be happy. Maybe. Happiness, from what I know, comes from like having a conversation with a good friend, or sharing a cup of coffee, or talking about our hopes and our dreams, or helping somebody if they're in need. One time I was in Rwanda, and I was giving a little talk to a bunch of school kids there in Rwanda when I lived with mountain gorillas for 7.5 months. I guess your people, right, in Rwanda. There's a movie called Gorillas in the Mist about Diane Fossey's work on research gorillas, and I worked for them as a field correspondent, writing stories and taking photos. And while I was there, I actually did one of my school presentations as a way to give to the community. At the end of that talk, one of the students goes, "Mr. Jacobs, you talked to us about following our dreams." I go, "Yeah." He goes, "What's the most important thing you could tell me as far as following my dreams?" I'm like, "Oh boy. What am I going to say to this young man?" Because Rwanda is 1/7 the size of Nebraska. I don't have anything to compare it to in Canada, but it's really tiny. I mean, it's tiny, but it's got 10 million people. Now, so that would be 7 Rwandas in Nebraska. Nebraska's got 1.8 million people in it. If you put 7 in Rwanda, that'd be 70 million people crammed in. It's really overpopulated. So I'm thinking, what am I going to tell this kid? I go, well, first of all, I stalled a little bit by saying that's a good question.
Let me think about this.
Because I'm processing. And then eventually, if you drop into here, you always find the right answer, I believe. And the answer I found is, well, the most important thing I can tell you as far as following your dreams, find a way to give more to life than what you take from it. And life will reward you. Life cannot stand a vacuum. So if you're giving to life, if you're contributing to life, life is going to reward you in ways that you can't even begin to imagine. So if you live in a grass hut, put some flowers on the outside, make it more beautiful. If you see your neighbor toiling in the field, struggling with something, don't wait for him to come over and ask you to help. Just go ask him. Just go help him. That's how you contribute to the world. That's how you make the world better, or some examples of the way they make it. That's how you give to life more than what you take from it. I promise you, life will reward you in ways you can't even begin to understand or imagine if you come with that type of attitude.
That is so amazing. You said so many powerful words and triggers for me that I'm like, okay, which way do I go? Because I want to cover all of these. But I love. I was going to ask you that question anyways. What did you find traveling when it came with people? What did you find? Were they hospitable? Were they kind? Were they disrespectful? What is it? Because most of the perceptions of the world that we have is through media, especially the Western world, especially on this side, because media is so heavily controlled and created, but the rest of the world is the same thing because they follow the same model. We find that people have already made up their mind about everything before even going there. And it's so against human behavior, human nature.
It doesn't serve us.
And it doesn't serve us.
It doesn't serve us in moving forward and having a world that can live in some kind of peace and harmony, to be putting their energy towards creating things that are good, that are beautiful, versus, trying to protect and live in a state of fear. We're never going to. I'm not saying bad people don't exist, and you and I am. I'm not talking about being Pollyannish or naive, because I had bad things happen to me as I traveled. I mean, I was robbed at gunpoint, and I encountered pickpocketers, but I was only robbed at gunpoint one time in 8 years of my life, going through 58 countries. Am I going to let that one time color all the countless and endless ways that people invited me into their house so they could meet someone from the United States for the first time, or to make sure I would get to the right street, or invite me to stay with them because they just wanted to be hospitable? Am I going to let those few moments color all the rest? No way. And I guess that's when you reach a certain level of maturity and understanding and appreciation and determination for the kind of world you want. That's what I choose to celebrate. That's what I choose to uplift. I don't tell my other story. I'll tell them. They're actually funny too. But mostly what I talk about is what's good, what's right, what's beautiful. Because that's what we put. I want to put that on their dashboard, because that's what's going to inspire us, you and me and the people around us, to take different actions and to move forward versus to stay trapped in the box of fear. And the mind is an incredible thing. It's like a search engine. It's like Google. If you put something in there, then it starts gathering evidence for that. And I want to challenge people to gather evidence for what's good, what's right, what's beautiful in the world, because that's what they'll find versus the other. Because you can find the other too. And I'm all for accountability, civil societies. So there's a sense of justice. I am all for the judicial system, as long as it's not corrupt, and the force, or the security systems, the police forces. The majority of those guys are women and men too. The majority of them are really good. There's a few bad ones, all right? But let's celebrate the good ones, so that way we drown out the bad ones and we don't give them any power.
And that's exactly what it is. That's an amazing point. And we know this, if you study enough, and Dean and I, we both work with people, and you find out very quickly that whatever you focus on, that becomes your reality. We think that we live our lives based on this ultimate objective reality, but that's not what happens in our daily life. Our perception of reality is very relative and very selective. So whatever we think about the most, whatever we're exposed to the most, whatever goes through our mind the most, that's what we're going to think reality is. And it's no surprise that most people around the world think that the world is a negative place, unless they've had the experience that shows the opposite.
Exactly. And that's why coaching is so important. That's why I love this whole arena of coaching, because what it does is it pulls people out of their normal mindset and bends the conversation forward to something positive. It's not about false ideas or manipulation. It's about helping people see a different reality that becomes empowering and nurturing and validating and uplifting.
Yeah, and that's what I find too. Aside from that, like our lives are filled with assumptions. Almost everything we think of life is an assumption. And I found that very quickly, especially with younger people, but even with many older people, because I've worked with people from 18 years all the way to 50 something.
Okay.
So to me, especially younger people, I actually worked with a young gentleman from Pakistan for a while. And because I do my coaching online through video conferencing, just like this. And I've lived in Pakistan, so I know their mindset. I lived there for 13 years. I know their mindset. I know the collective perception there. I know how they think, and I felt like I could help them. So, and that's why he chose me as well. So when I went through the first few sessions, literally the first 6 to 8 sessions were me basically helping them debunk those assumptions. Because, and it wasn't that I told him that this is wrong, this is right. No, I kept asking him. So he would say, well, this is how the world sees us as Pakistani. This is how the world treats us. He had a lot of those concepts like that. And that prevents me from living a certain way. This is how I should be. What you said about expectations. This is what my parents expect of me. This is what my society expects of me. So how should I live in that way? So I kept asking him. I'm like, okay, why do you believe you think like that? Did you come up with it on your own, or did you get that from somewhere? And then almost always he would notice that it goes back to his immediate environment, either his family or his bigger family, and then society in general. So almost everything that we think is a collection of thoughts, emotions, ideas that come from our surrounding environment. So at some point we're going to have to ask ourselves, well, what I want and what I don't want, is that based on what I truly want? Is that based on my heart? Is that based on what I want? Or is that something that's given to me and I'm running after it?
Bam.
Right? And there's one thing that one of my favorite philosophers said, Manly Palmer Hall. He's from Peterborough, Ontario here, but he lived most of his life in California, known in the esoteric philosophy area. One thing he said, that if you study the course of human history, we can study it together and find out that we have no understanding of what good is, but we know very well what bad is, because our history books are filled with that. And if we just stop doing those, we might just create a better world for ourselves.
Oh man, what a powerful quote. Exactly.
Powerful, right?
Yeah, because like the search, like what I mentioned, the mind is like the Google search engine, so it gathers evidence for what it's looking for. And then if it can't find what it's looking for, then maybe it starts to create what it's looking for. So if you're looking for bad stuff and you can't find it, unconsciously, I think people start doing bad things because they're convinced that the world's supposed to be bad. So then they take actions that confirm that belief.
Yeah,
right.
definitely.
And I just, thank goodness, I was able to step out of that box and continue to do so. First of all, it's having awareness of the box. Most people don't even know they're there, right? They just think this is what it is, like fish in the water. Once you jump out, then it gives you room. Yeah, and then it gives you room to start to question things, not from a place of fear, but from a place of, no, I really want to know what life's about, the best that I can. I want to understand. I also want to create the best version of me that I'm capable of doing. But if you're always operating from a foundation of fear, you can't become that, because it's too constricting. I think the beauty in the creation of life is a more of a flowing thing that is fed by goodness and kindness and beauty and things like that, and continually expands and goes forward. The opposite of that would be darkness and absence of fear, right? I mean, absence of love. And this keeps us trapped in the box. So it's our job, with our awareness, to the best of our capacity, how much light can I bring in? How much love can I bring in? How much goodness can I get? How much can I create? How much can I contribute to make the world what? Better, right? And that's why I go back to that framework with these kids. That's why it's so powerful. We're not here to live in little boxes. We're here to stretch those boxes by dreaming big, having a picture of what you want to see, become, try, do, have. There's nothing wrong with stuff, by the way. I want to, I'm cool with people if they want to have stuff. But if the equation is I can only be happy if I have this stuff, then they're never going to have enough stuff to be happy, because it's a bottomless pit kind of thing. Because there's always something bigger, brighter, newer kind of thing in order to actually be happy. And living tall, kindness, dignity, respect, all those things. Those are our guideposts. This becomes the map. The map. What's a map for, Faisal?
Map to find your way.
Exactly. Show you where you are. And where you want to go. Exactly. So this becomes, this is the map. Except this map, I asked a kid the other day, I go, what's a map? He goes, well, it's like a GPS, but it's on paper. I love that answer. And but I go, that's cool, because I want to talk to you about the map that lives in your mind and the map that lives in your heart. So that way we can know where we are, and we can figure out where we want to go. And this dream big, live tall, make the world better, that becomes their map to help us, guide us along the way. It's not everything, but it's really good foundation. And it gives us something to stand on, to work with. And then we can expand that as we grow in maturity and our awareness. But we have a lot of people that are just going through the motions of life, and it brings me pain, but people are waking. And for those who, just don't want to go through the motions of life, pay bills and die, there are different choices. There are different avenues. And that's why coaching is so important, because that's the wake-up call, right? That's the conversation that people start to look and discover and see things that they didn't understand. When we bend those conversations forward, so they start to ask those empowering questions, good empowering questions that help them discover something new about the world and also about themselves, right?
Definitely. And I love, I love all the words you're using. They're like every time you say something, my mind opens up. Is like, okay, I got to talk about this, but no, I want to keep on track with one thing, because I love what you said about the box. Because well, like you said, you need to have the awareness of the box, because most people don't even believe that they're in a box. So then my question to you is, and this is very important, because unless you have that awareness, you're not going to try to get out of it. Unless you know that you're caged, you're not going to try at all. You won't even know what freedom is, or what the concept of freedom is. So I want to think about, why is it that someone like yourself and someone like me believe that how we're living generally in society, based on the whole concept that's given to us, that you must go to school, work the rest of your life, then find a mate and get a house, and that will make you happy. And in the middle, you're getting a lot of stuff. So that's the assumption, right? That's the formula given to us, and that equals to happiness and a fulfilled life. But we've done that to death over the past 100 years or so. And we find that happiness hasn't risen. It's actually the opposite of that has risen. We have more stuff, but we don't have the right feelings. So
Yes.
something is not working. So then from your perspective, how do we know that exploring, how do we know that learning, how do we know that connecting with others, how do we know that all these things are what comes naturally to us, for one thing, and how do we know that this will make us happy?
Well, how do you know it won't?
Good point.
I mean, there's only one way of knowing,
Yeah.
and that's to do it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise it's a concept. I mean, what we're talking about could be come boxed into a concept. So I'm just sharing what I have learned from my own life experiences, and like, all right, yeah, I know. 10 years, by the way, 10 years in the corporate world. I mean, it's not like I was just a year or two and said, I jetted out. Like I did that path for a long time, and it gave me a lot that I'm really grateful for, but it didn't give me what we're talking about, that sense of fulfillment, that sense of challenge. Well, there was different challenges, but they were challenges like, well, you broke a sales record this year. What are you going to do next year? I mean, they weren't the internal challenges that expanded my humanity. They were just challenges that came from trying to meet company objectives. I got it. I knew I was training my life energy for their business goals, right? I was really aware of that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I applaud and I admire anybody who's in the business world, who's doing what they need to do to provide for their family, because that's noble, that's honorable. They shouldn't question that. But we can also inject into the conversation these other things that will stretch our humanity, to expand our humanity, so we can get to grow, and we can learn and have a deeper appreciation for what life's all about. That's what I'm trying to get to. And that makes sense, Burl?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. That's an amazing point you brought up.
And so how do we know these things? Like, well, do I look sad? do I sound sad? So look to the people in our world that like, oh, that person's got something going on. What are they doing? I get approached all the time. By the way, I'm always telling kids, I get approached all the time. It's more like I'm approaching people all the time, because I want to be in a world that's filled with kindness and generosity and fun people. So I'm always telling the kids, don't wait for the world how you want it to be. You be that way and let the world catch up. And I want to be in a world that has all these good qualities. And that's what it means to be a leader. And then, of course, people want, well, how'd you get that way? Well, through a lot of bouncing around. And, I've had my heart broke multiple times, and I've been disappointed, and I've been scared and all those things. But I have chosen to use those experiences to help me learn and grow and become wiser, not bitter and resigned and trapped in a box. That's the difference.
That's amazing. That's exactly what I was hoping you will say, because that's what I was trying to get to. And the reason I'm trying to get to that is that most people believe that they'll get over their fears by sitting there and thinking. They'll figure out, they will sit there and pray and write and think about the life that they want, and that life will somehow come to them, or that life will come to them based on the model that's given to them.
Yes.
And like you said, it's nothing against the world that we have created, nothing against that formula of going to work, going to school, being in the corporate world, having a family. I have no problem with that. I have a family. I take care of them as my responsibility, but I haven't stopped my dreams because of that. So
right.
The point here is that the problem that I have is that stop giving people a model. We live in a world of diversity, not just in terms of humans, but if you've traveled in natural areas, what do you find when you go to Amazon? Diversity. You find species, things that you can't even imagine. Same thing anywhere you go. There's diversity. There's abundance. But
yes.
We, out of our collective fear, have created standardized systems that we think should apply to everybody. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked for hundreds of years, and we found that out. But we're still not taking that action towards it. So in the past few months, one thing that that has kept repeating in my mind and has helped me a lot with my fears is that fear in itself, most of the fears that we have outside of the physical fears, are made up in our head. They're made up from the thoughts, ideas, emotions that are given to us in our environment, from our external environment. And we start to believe over time that they're our thoughts, they're our fears, because we feel them. We say that, oh, I feel fearful, but are they really, is that really the case? You have to test that out for yourself. You can be a scientist in that sense. And you can say to yourself, and that's what I've said to myself, is that action is the antidote to fear. So the fear doesn't go away before the action. It goes away after you take action. Just like you said, you felt the fear before you went on your journey. But one, you had your aspirations. You had your purpose that kept you going, your thoughts. But you still didn't know what was going to happen.
Can I add something to this? Because this is an important conversation, especially fear. Because it's not going to go away. And it's actually, fear has served us to stay alive, to have survival, to get here. I mean, and I don't want to judge it completely bad, because we also have to be objective about it too.
Definitely, yeah.
And people think, they look at me like, oh, you interviewed rebel generals in the Congo and lived with mountain gorillas and floated 3,000 miles down the Amazon and climbed inside the pyramids of Egypt and did the Trans-Siberian Railroad, and I've done some pretty amazing things. They go, oh, you're so courageous. You must not be afraid of everything. But the truth is, of course I have fear. I do. Anyone who says they're not afraid, you get away from them. Because
they're not telling the truth.
They're not telling the truth, or they're not mentally wired right? If they don't have any fear going on. But the choice is this is what I teach the kids. I have my dreams be bigger than my fears. I have my dreams to be bigger than my fears. I feed my fears. I feed my dreams. I starve my fears. With what I mean by that is by the attention and focus and the energy I put on them. I am aware of them, because I don't want to walk down dark alleys, $50 at night. Walk down dark alleys with $50 hanging out my back pocket at night. That's stupid, asking for trouble, right? And so I'm aware, but I don't let fear determine what I'm going to do or not do on my journey. I have a story. Can I tell you a story?
Sure, of course. I love stories.
I haven't told this story for a long time. Good conversation. So I was in Australia when 9/11 happened. Man, that was an interesting time to actually be traveling around the world. And I had to make some decisions. Do I go home to the United States, or do I continue to travel, whatever? And I finally got to the point, after searching, I go, well, I'm going to have my dreams be bigger than my fears. Bam. And then the other thing I decided was I refuse to let fear determine what I'm going to do or not do on my journey. I refuse to let fear make that decision what I'm going to do. Because the next country I was supposed to go, or that I did go to, was Indonesia. It's the largest Muslim country in the world. And there was all kinds of radical fractions of Islam going on in Indonesia that they're going to remove all Western people. Anybody who looks like they're from Nebraska, right?
Yeah.
But I decided I wasn't going to let fear stop me from following my dreams. So I went to Indonesia anyway. And I was only going to go 2 weeks. I stayed 2 months because the people treated me with such kindness and dignity and respect. And I fell in love with the country and the people and this incredible diversity of life. And sometimes people would come up to me and they would ask, aren't you afraid of sweeping? Because that was the term that the radicals were using, like they're going to sweep across Indonesia to remove all Western people. But instead of answering that with a yes or no, I gave them a question back. I go, you tell me, should I be afraid of sweeping? And they go, no, it's happening in the next village. And what I discovered was it was all driven by rumor. It wasn't driven by any kind of fact or reality. And that's what happens with fear. It feeds on a rumor, on stuff that's not true. And then it just kind of takes a life of its own, and it gets way blown out of proportion. And then we lose perspective. And when we lose perspective, we don't make good choices. And then we start to demonize whole cultures and peoples based on a foundation of fear that's not based in truth.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that distinction. I love that story. And that's what I was trying to get at with fear, is that fear in itself is not bad. In fact, without fear, we wouldn't have survived.
Right.
Without our natural fears as human beings, we would not have survived. And let's make that distinction, as you said, is that the natural fears that we have is an awareness.
Yep.
We are just like if you watch a deer or a cat, even when they're eating, they're aware of their environment.
Oh yeah, exactly.
That's a very powerful awareness, because that helps them survive. So we have the same awareness, which we call fear, but that awareness, we've kind of let it relax a bit, in a sense, because we live in societies where there aren't any predatory animals other than us. But
Right.
Aside from that, the fear that we're trying to touch on is what Dean talked about, is that fear that's based on rumors, that's based on made up ideas and thoughts. And those fears are made up, completely made up. Sometimes it even goes generationally. We make up an idea. This is how tribes continued their warfare, is that their elders created an idea about a tribe that might or might not be true, and the future generations carry on the fight. I've seen that within my own families. I have large families, and I've seen conflicts go on for multiple generations based on one conflict that two elders had. None of them were there. It wasn't written. It wasn't corroborated. There was no evidence to speak of, but their children had been in conflict for the next 3 generations.
Indoctrinated.
And this is what happens. And because we are so keenly aware of what might harm us, we take an idea and we make it a part of us, and we say that I feel that. And that might not be true. So there's something I love. I don't know if you know Sadhguru. He's one of the recent mystic teachers of our time. He created inner engineering.
No, I don't know him.
Go to his seminar. He's on YouTube all the time. So he's a mystic. He's a philosopher, I think, because he teaches people. And his concept is that for human beings to survive moving forward, we have to open our minds and heart. We have to become more spiritual, in the sense that we need to become open to possibilities rather than what we think we know. So one thing he said that really amazed me was that we have this idea that we know what the world is like. We know what we're like. We know who we are, our concept of self. We know how others are like. And it's all based on I know. But every time you say that I know, you just blocked every possibility outside of that I know. But what would happen if you say, I don't know? And it's very hard for a lot of people to say that. It's been hard for me, I can admit that. But I've had to open myself up to possibilities that what we think we know about the world, about people, our state of mind, even ourselves, what we think we know about ourselves might be completely bullshit. And it is. The more you look into it, the more you realize that what we know of who we are is a caricature. It's a tiny perspective.
Yep.
And when we open up to I don't know, despite the fears, you open up a world of possibilities.
Yeah, then magic happens.
That's where the magic happens.
Yeah, that's when magic starts. The more I've heard it said, the more I travel. Well, I've said to myself, the more I learn and travel, the more I realize how much I don't know. Right. Because the more I'm exposed to things and different ideas and approaches and perspective, the more I realize, oh, I know so little. And there's so much out there. Now, you can either be afraid of that, or you can say, oh, this is what I've decided. There's so much out there that can help me have a good journey, help me have a good life. Different ideas and perspectives and rituals and practices and information that can help me have a deeper appreciation for life and to celebrate it in a good way.
Definitely. And I love that. And I find that so amazing. And that's what that idea has opened me up to people, because living in Toronto, I haven't traveled as extensively as you have, but living in Toronto, I've been exposed to so many different cultures. And for those who are watching, some of my viewers know my stories, that I actually came to Canada around 9/11 time. So the same summer, we came in July 27, and 9/11 happened in September. And I came with a lot of hopes and dreams. It was supposed to be a heaven on earth, Canada, and in a lot of ways is an amazing place. But when I came, one of the first things that happened that was very challenging for me for the next 10 years was that my beliefs got challenged.
Yep.
My perspective of the world got challenged. And I did not, having the mind that I have, I want to understand things, and I want to have a perspective about the world. I couldn't understand that what I was taught since childhood might not be true. So I was under the assumption that whatever I was taught that's the reality. I had an objective reality of the world. But as soon as I came here, I realized that, oh my God, they're not only the Western people think differently, completely differently. It's like going to an alien world, but also there are probably 100 different cultures that would think even differently than that.
Yeah.
And
Right.
soon I started to go into the state where I couldn't, my identity was lost. I was lost. I didn't know what to believe anymore. And there came a point after a lot of self-sabotage, abuse, where I decided, I'm like, you know what? I have to put aside everything that I think I know. Without that, I cannot understand. I cannot know who I am. And that's when the possibilities happened for me, because I started learning things on my own. And very quickly, I realized that almost everything that I was taught was not the reality of what is happening.
That is really wise, buddy. And you can even be grateful for the hard path that you went
Oh,
down.
I am. Without that,
Right.
I wouldn't be where I am.
Right, exactly. Because it allows you to speak about it in a way and share your journey in a way that other people who are also in that same spot or feel the same way, like, oh, I'm not crazy for thinking or feeling this way.
Yeah.
I'm like, and there are other options, there are avenues, there are ways to move the conversation forward to help us make the most out of this beautiful thing called life, why we're here, right?
Yeah, and that's, and what you just said, like that word triggers me so much. What you said crazy. And for about 20 years of my life, 25 to 28 years of my life, I literally believed that I was crazy.
Wow.
Even though I was living a normal life in every sense of the world, but internally, I thought that everything I thought was crazy until I met my wife, who had similar ideas and thoughts as me. And then for the first time, I met my mentor, who's my grandfather-in-law, and he told me that, oh, you have potential. I was like, wow, what is he? At first I thought, I'm like, maybe he's crazy too. But then when I saw that he had an actual interest, and he said that my mind was extraordinary in a lot of senses, then I started thinking, like, okay, maybe I'm the crazy one. Yeah.
Maybe you're not the crazy one. Maybe the rest of the world's crazy, and they're trying to get back to a place where at peace, right?
Yeah, and that's, we at some point as human beings, we're gonna have to decide the world that we're running. Despite all the positivity, it will not be a sane world if we put everybody in boxes.
Yeah.
If we put individuals and groups in boxes and expect them in our mind to behave a certain way, it won't work like that. Yes, like you said, are there risks to this? There's always risks to anything. You walk out the door, there's a risk you're going to get hit by a car or by something else. But you choose to take that risk because you want to live your life. Now, the question is, do you want to live a better version of that life?
Are you asking me that question, or is that just
I'm asking the viewers, but you can answer that if you like.
I'm always trying to well, the answer is yes. I'm always trying to live a better version of who Dean Jacobs can be. I'm always trying to grow into a better version of me. That's why, I stretch myself and I read good material and I go to different cultures to expand my perspective. I'm always trying to stretch my box, whether it's mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. There was one: mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. Well, those are the main ones, right?
Sure. I like to say physically, mentally, and emotionally. I think that covers spiritually as well, because if you're not in those three states proper, you won't even touch spiritual. You won't even be close to that. And that's awesome. And I wanted to ask you, so as somebody who does what he does, traveling the world, writing, having all that experience, I would love to know your perspective on what would be if somebody wanted to start off like you, or if somebody wanted to go a different path. It doesn't have to be like what you did, something that would be outside of what they are expected to do. What are the top 5 lessons that you can give them?
The top 5 lessons that I can give him: be curious. Number 1. That's like number 1. Like that might be all 5 to a certain degree. Be curious. Be curious about the world. Be curious about yourself. Be curious about your neighbors. Be curious about how things work. Why things are the way they are to a certain degree. And then number 2 would be grateful. always come from a place of gratitude. Even when it gets hard, those things offer us an opportunity to learn, to grow, to have an appreciation for the gift of life. Then I would also say, number 3, shake it up, change it up. So if you're in a work world and you're doing your thing, like, well, I'm in this rut, for example, and I'm to take a different way home from work. Purposely, intentionally take a different way home from work. Notice things as you take that as you drive home, or take the train home, or the bus home, or whatever it is. Like, walk a different block or something, and see things with fresh eyes and in a new perspective. People think I grew up to be a world explorer, but the truth is I've been exploring my whole life. It started, the one I remember, actually, I was 9 when I was telling you the story, but I remember when I was 4, out walking in the woods, watching a mother mouse moving her babies up and down the trees and things like that. Like, that curiosity and awe and appreciation of life is, I think, in there for all of us. Now, if we try to box it in, then we're not serving life in that sense. Find a way to give more life than what you take from it. So be of service, contribute to the world around you, make it beautiful. We all have the capacity to contribute. A lot of times we fall into the trap of, like, when we say contribute, our mindset, at least in the Western world, automatically goes to, well, to give some money away or something, but there's other ways to contribute. It could be as simple as just opening the door for somebody or smiling at somebody, but be intentional about your contribution to the world. How many is that, Faisal?
4.
Okay.
One more.
One more.
You can do it.
Yeah. So the question is, repeat the question for me, because I want to make sure I get it right.
Top 5 things you want to tell somebody who wants to start their journey on a different path, or on a path of possibility.
Last one is this: dreams are not for special people, they're for everybody. And we get a lot of concepts and ideas in our mind, in our head, like only the most wealthy can do these things, only the most beautiful, only the most talented, fill in the blank. But that's not true. Because I'm an ordinary guy from Nebraska. There is nothing special in my pedigree. If you would have looked at me in 4th grade with a shaved head because we couldn't afford to send me to the barber, my dad would just set me on the washing machine and shave my head off because we didn't have enough money to send me to the barber. If you would have looked at me in 4th grade, you would not have said, this guy's going to go explore the whole world. We would not have known that. We do not know the potential that live in us completely on ourselves, and we don't know the potential that lives in the people around us. So remember that. And in that cloud of doubt that we all tend to live in, like, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not whatever enough, those are false, those are lies. That's the foundation of fear that stops us, keeps us trapped in the box. So dreams are not for special people, they're for everyone. And when you follow your dreams, you become special. That's how it works.
Definitely. That's amazing. Those were amazing top 5s, better than what I hoped. And and I'm sure somebody will get inspired by that, listening to that. And I love what you covered today. And I just want to touch on one thing. One thing I wanted to mention from my perspective is that we started this off with assumptions, that we have assumptions about everything in life. We think that world is a certain way. We think that we are a certain way. But if you just start with this idea that I don't know myself, I don't know the world, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, you can go to a lot of places. That's to begin with. But just a few things that I've learned about human beings. One of the things that a lot of people might not know, I actually changed my last name to from here it was Safi to Siddiqui. Safi was more of a tribal type of connection and allegiance. So last name kind of means allegiance in a sense in my culture. So I changed that to Insan, which in my language means human.
Oh, nice.
And to me, that's very symbolic. It might be, and I had to deal with a lot of resistance from my family as well, but it was something I was actually called to. Like, I couldn't get it out of my head. I started feeling like, okay, I had that conversation with a friend, and I'm like, okay, I'll let it go. For 2 months, I couldn't stop thinking about that because that was so close to my purpose, that I want to connect with human beings. I don't have any particular allegiances to one or the other. This doesn't mean that I don't want to be a part of my culture, or I don't love my culture. I do. I've learned a lot from it. I've connected a lot, and I can't separate myself from that identity. But it also means that we're in a world where we might not have a choice but to get together. And we don't. We are living in a global world. We're consistently dealing with people from different cultures, religions, perspectives, different ways of life. And unless we find a way to get along with them, we cannot live a harmonious life. We cannot live a peaceful life. And that starts with, I don't know.
Yeah.
That starts with you looking at the possibilities. And the amazing thing is, when you study human behavior like I do, and like you yourself do from your research and from your experience, is that from every field that you look at, when you combine them, what you find that all those things you said, we have those things within us. It's not that we don't have curiosity. It's not that we have an abundance of curiosity. Just watch a child. I have a 3-year-old daughter. If you watch her, and I have a great story, and I told you guys that in the group, that we went on this trail, which is 0.5 kilometer, and usually it would take me like 10 minutes to go through the whole thing back and forth, but it took us about an hour and a half to go through that. Not because she couldn't walk. She could walk perfectly fine, but she would stop and look at every little thing. Everything was amazing for her. And actually, even though it was slow, but it gave us perspective. We just walked right by everything.
Right.
Just because we think we know, just because we think we've experienced it. But when you stop and slow down, you notice a lot of things that you haven't. So we find that naturally, as human beings, we are curious. We want to go towards possibility. If you study the history of human beings, we have always traveled. As communities, as groups, as individuals, we've always wanted to know what's out there.
Yep.
So that whole myth that we're afraid of what we don't know is a myth. That's all it is. We might be afraid of what we project onto what we don't know, but we're not afraid of what we don't know. We're more curious about it. And the fact that we want to connect with other people, it doesn't matter from where. If you put 2 children together who hasn't been indoctrinated yet, what do? The first thing, they want to go close to that child. They want to touch them. They want to play with them. Why is that? Why do we want to connect with different things? Not even other children, animals. They would want to go near animals. And plants, or anything, just because we're immensely curious. And that's actually have been a huge part of our survival as human beings, is that learning, that curiosity. Even though you might think we might run into a lot of problems, we did, but like you said, the purpose is greater than fear for us.
Yeah.
And if we keep our purpose, whatever that is, and it's not a determined thing that we should do this based on what we're taught. There are so many possibilities, especially in today's day and age with the technology that we have. There's so many things that we can do. You don't have to travel the world, but make a difference in your own way. Live your own dream, not the things that are given to you. So I love the conversation that we had. Is beyond my expectations, and I love what you do, Dean. I love your perspective, and I think it's people like yourself that need to be there. And I said this to Dean before too, that I wish I had somebody that inspired me like Dean before. I wish I came across, because more than likely I'd be traveling with him.
Yeah, and I know my words make an impact. I mean, last summer I got an email from some student who said she heard me when she was in kindergarten, and now that was 15 years ago. Wow. And she was writing me, and she was telling me how she had traveled a little bit around the world, and then she was going to the school of her dreams, Ohio State, to become a pilot, because that was another one of her passions, her dreams. And when she was unpacking her boxes, she found one of my books, and that's when she realized where a lot of her dreams came from. So she wrote me this email to thank me for giving me hope to believe in her dreams.
And that's amazing. And that's why I really respect what you do, because I know how much of a difference it makes. I've been inspired by the people that have inspired me. I have never forgotten them. The people who have connected with me, who inspired me, who've taught me even one tiny lesson, nobody can sit here and say that they forgot that lesson. Right. They remember it. You might not follow it, but you'll remember it. I don't want to forget what you just said. I wanted to make a point about that. If I can, don't slip my mind. Okay, that's gone. I think that's gone. We covered. It's gone. That was a momentary thought. Well,
I was talking about the feedback I got from that young lady from 15 years ago. To give her, we plant seeds. This is why that's why I said yes to your video, because there's some people are going to watch this, and some seeds are going to get planted in these people, whether they ever watch anything else or see us ever again. But maybe we plant some seeds in people that they start to think a little bit differently, and they approach life from a different angle and from a different perspective, where they start to get hungry again to be engaged with one another and the world and their family, and that's just creates a healthy community, right? I mean, there's nothing but good that can come. Doesn't mean bad things, challenging things won't happen, but like the ultimate outcome is a rich, vibrant, alive, engaged world, and I just think that's what we're fighting for.
Definitely. And I just remember what I was going to say. I think this
Yeah, I
is
knew it'd
important.
help.
This is important. I actually had a conversation with a couple of ladies, 3 ladies before, and we talked about a very important subject. So how do we make a bigger difference in the world? How do we make a bigger difference? And when you think about it, it's such a huge problem that we can't look at it from outside in. But what would happen, and this, let's think about it. Jacob and Dean and I work with people, and you find out very quickly if people are happy in who they are, if people are happy in their lives, they automatically will make a difference. They automatically will go towards helping other people live a more happy life. But if we have more miserable people in the world, what happens? They become hateful, they become resentful, they become, just because they have all those things within themselves. So yes, to begin with, we need to create that perspective within ourselves. To begin with, we need to understand who we are. That's why self-awareness is top on my list more than anything else. And to begin with, we need to be a little happier and help others be a little bit happier on a day-to-day basis, every day of our life. And that's what makes a better world more than anything else.
Bam. Yeah, shine. We had an election here recently in the last couple of years that has shook things up, and people call me like, "What are we going to do? What are we going to do?" And I go, "You're going to do what you've always done, except you're going to do it twice as much. You're going to burn twice as bright. You're going to be twice as good, twice as generous, twice as kind, twice as caring. You're going to double down on all those goodness. That's what we're going to do, because." The alternative is that we get sucked into the negative narrative that takes the oxygen of our curiosity away and leaves us empty, frustrated, and trapped in the what? Box.
Yep. And we're right back to where we started. Don't be trapped in the box. Whatever your possibility is, look for that. Live your dreams, because that's what will make you happy, and that's what will make everyone around you in the long run happy.
Yes. And neither Faisal or I can tell you what your dream should be. That's going to be your work. That no one can tell you what your dreams are, and this is where we get sideways or we get in trouble, because we take on other people's expectations. That's your work to figure out what, because I have a whole talk I do with students, like, what's it mean to have a dream? Because like what you said earlier, like, we don't have people talking to students or young people that way. What's it mean to have a dream? Because we think one day I'm going to grow up and be a fireman or a doctor or something. Like, no, I'm talking about, like, what's it mean to have a good, fun, engaged, vibrant life? What kind of experiences do you want to have? What do you want to see? What do you want to experience? What do you want to try? Not just only what do you want to become, but who do you want to be? That's your dream, and you have to figure that out. And no one can tell you. We can have conversations. We can stretch you. Good coaching will help you discover those things within yourself. But eventually, you have to choose. This is who I choose to be, because this is who I choose, right? Definitely. And there's lots of me I don't know, and there's a lot of things I don't know, but I'm not going to be able to discover that by staying trapped in the box and doing the same thing over and over and over, hoping to get different results. Yeah,
and here's our challenge to you. Here's my challenge to you, is that today, take the time to go away somewhere alone. You don't have to go far. Just go for a walk. Go for something. Take a pen or pad with you, and just go for a walk, or be outside somewhere or inside. It doesn't matter. Be somewhere alone and start thinking about, what does your ideal life look like? What would you do if money and resources and any of those were not an issue? What would you really want to do? What would make you happy? What would make you fulfilled? And really sit down, just think about that and write down. Write as much as you can about that. And that might spark something in you, and that might take you somewhere that you don't know yet.
Guarantee it will, if you have the determination to live your life. If you do what Faisal suggested, that's powerful. That's magic and powerful stuff, man. So good suggestion, Faisal.
Thank you. And I want to thank again Dean for coming on here. It's such an honor to have him on my channel, and it's such an amazing thing. I was so excited about this. I'm even more excited about putting this out now, so my viewers can take advantage of this. So before we end the video, I just want to offer my viewers that if you want to take your life towards possibilities, if you want to know, if you want a little bit of help in that, if you want to know yourself, if you want to create a plan towards living your dream, if you want to create a tangible plan for your dream, for your life, for your happiness, then take advantage of the 90-minute free strategy session that I'm giving you guys. All you have to do is go to the link that I'm going to post below and fill out the questionnaire. That'll just let me know whether or not I can help you towards that end. And if I can, then I'm going to offer you that free 90-minute strategy session. We'll book that and we'll get you started. So just click on that link in the info section or go to the link that I'm going to post below. And if you want to reach Dean, he's going to talk about that. Go ahead, Dean.
Well, there's a couple ways to find me. I have a website, My website's Dean Jacobs, really easy, just like my name, DeanJacobs.org. Or Instagram's a good way to follow me too. Or even if you don't want to travel the world, I'm always posting beautiful photos from all over the world, and so you can travel with me vicariously. And on Instagram, Explore with Dean, all one word, Explore with Dean, no gaps. And give me a like and travel the world with me.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Dean, for coming again, and looking forward to maybe in the future we'll get you back in here too.
I would love it, buddy. Thank you. Thanks for what you do.
Thank you. Thank you very much.